Welcome to the Fulfillment Project podcast. I'm your host, Simpli Sara, and I'm so glad that we've connected here today. I've created a series called Life Chats. This is a 4-part series of each of my amazing guests as I take you on a journey through their awakening process. My aim and goal for this show is to give you, the seeker, a container to explore your own growth as you awaken and step into more alignment, more joy, and more fulfillment every single day. Welcome back to Life Chats with Simpli Sara. We have part 4 with Claudia. Claudia, welcome back.
Thank you. Ready for part 4?
Yes, we've been on quite a journey through all of these episodes. For those of you watching or listening here, we don't record these back to back. This has been about a 2.5-week process of getting these out, and really why I structure the conversations like this, because when you really get on that growth wave, we'll call it, and start getting into alignment, you really start to feel the momentum, even from a day-by-day perspective. And I think sharing some of those stories of what's even happened with you over the past couple of weeks will be a really good conversation today, because you're really finding alignment. You're noticing so many lessons, and when you get into alignment, everything just feels like it 10x in terms of effort or thoughts or even conversations that you have with people. So I think chatting about that high riding wave will be very valuable today. Yes. If you haven't watched parts 1 to 3 with Claudia here, we went into so much depth. I was actually watching episode 1 and 2 yesterday, making some show notes for the editor. And, we talked about people pleasing. We talked about getting over perfectionism. We talked about growth cycles. We talked about different tools. There's just so many insights and cool things that people can go and utilize from this. And thank you for sharing your journey up until this point.
Thank you for giving me a place to do it. I was so happy after our first recording. I was like, oh, I'm so happy we have 3 more. Lots to talk about this, because there's so much we can go into. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. And that's why I love that I've called this Life Chats as well. And I mean, we've even said this for years. We're like, oh yeah, I need a life chat, or I need a life chat, because conversations and sharing growth, whether it's the highs or the lows, I find helps us move through resistance so much faster. And, Claudia, absolutely, you and I have both benefited even from our friendship and, the weekends away that we've had, and just chatting about what is happening in life, so that you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're going crazy. You almost give yourself permission to want more and go after more and achieve more, but in that aligned state. And so I really hope our listeners, I know that they will get so much out of your conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about where you're currently at. A lot of the conversation came down to you recognizing misalignment in 2022 with your business, which can, be scary. And it's not about always just, and I think maybe the conversation will lead from here, about everything has to change at once, which I think it can freeze people. It can paralyze them. It can put them back in old habits, because they don't know what that overall change needs to be. And you don't need to know what it is. You just need to understand how to surrender a little bit and be open to the next idea and the next idea. And so start a conversation off with us of talking about recognizing something needed to change, and then what you've been doing over the past, I think it's been about a month, and just getting some really good momentum going. And so what does that look like when you recognize something's wrong and then you need to get back into alignment?
So I think that we can go back to, I think it was part 2, where I was explaining what a growth cycle means to me, and that first step is oh, something feels off, I'm working hard, I'm doing all the things, but it just feels hard. I'm not getting the results that I would expect to have, I'm super aware of all versions of me creeping up. And I'm like, no, I've healed you, I'm moving forward. So that awareness brought, these realizations that in 2021, even though I love what I do and I was always passionate about coaching, I was misaligned within different services and how I was coaching and operating within my business. And a lot of resistance came up because, like you said, I didn't have clarity about where I was going. I was getting nudges and pushes and breakdowns and going through cycles again and again, until I really surrendered, I think is the perfect word, to what is actually easy and meant to be, even if that means that it's different from what I've been doing in the past. And even if that means that I don't have, again, 100% clarity or where this is going. So for me, it was, I've had we coach clients with what we go through, right? So I was, and I talked about this in part 3, I think, like I was misaligned with the message. So what I was living in my personal life, especially my spiritual growth in the last like 2-3 years, I was not really talking about it. I started to do some podcast episodes with like guests that would talk a bit more about like their spiritual awakenings and their personal development, and like something as simple as like using crystals or grounding yourself, or me myself doing Reiki treatments, like energy healing treatments. But this is not what I was coaching on, and this is not what I was marketing about or talking about on my social media posts and my content. So I felt like the nudge to start talking more about these things that I was going through and that I was learning, and that really were changing my life, and the again, like growing so fast. But I didn't know how I could bring that into my business, because I've been Claudia, the coach, for 15 years, helping women, train and like eat better, and like the really fundamental habits when it comes to your 4 pillars. So like training, recovery, nutrition, mindset. So I was like, where does the personal development and like their spirituality come in when I'm so used to coaching this way and talking about a certain specific topic in a certain specific way in my business mountain? So it all made sense on paper, but again, the misalignment was very uncomfortable, because from pushing and putting a lot of effort here, but not getting the results, I was like, okay, I need to step back and surrender and just, and I'll use something that you say all the time, follow the joy. So in November, what happened is that Sylvie, who's my own energy healer, she's a Reiki master. I've been wanting to be initiated as a Reiki practitioner myself forever, like for years. But like something was not in alignment. It just wasn't the time. And now looking back, I know exactly why I had to do it this fall and not before that. And I just decided to, you know what, maybe it's not meant for me. I'm going to stop trying to like force this or make this happen. And then she reached out to me in November and be like, oh, are you ready to do your initiation? Like perfect date. I was available. Like, again, no resistance. Everything was just flowing. So I did it. It was great. Opened up a lot of things for me within my own spiritual practices. But then again, I was really resisting that, like, how am I going to bring this into a business? I don't want to fall into like, again, old versions of myself of like strategize and income targets and like bring this as like a service and just use this this old gift that I had, that I explored once again in the fall, as like the very masculine and targets and, not from the heart and the intuition, but from the head and the brain, which is how I've always operated in my business. So there was resistance. I started to do some treatments on like very close friends, close family, like in my home. So not the ideal setup at all, but just like kind of playing with it. And then we went away first week of February, and I was like chatting about all these experiences I was getting and like doing the treatments on myself and like the downloads I was getting and tapping back into this gift that I've had for forever. Like I knew when I was a kid that I had this gift, the light, and the connection to like source, or however you want to call it. But I tamed it a lot. So stepping back into that, like fired up this excitement within myself that I hadn't felt, even though I love what I do and I love my clients and I've had a lot of great success with my business. It fired up that spark, that excitement that I hadn't felt in a really long time. And I remember you asking me like, what's the fear? Like, what's the resistance? And because again, I was with you and Emma and like this safe space, like everything just came out, like this is the fear, this is the resistance, this is why I'm holding back. And then that night when we drove home on Monday night, I think I sent you a message. I was like, that's it. It's going out. The email is going out tomorrow morning. I'm going to announce it. I'm going to start offering it. And yeah, it's been 1 month, pretty much day to day. And how fast and how easy it has all like unfolded for me in the last 4 weeks is just mind blowing. I have goosebumps just talking about it right now.
I have goosebumps as well. My whole body just lit up.
Yeah, because I didn't have any expectations. The next step was just following the joy, listening to that inner spark. My mantra for February was follow decide with your heart and with your intuition. I literally benched my brain. I was like, you're going on timeout. You're just going to follow what feels good. And because I still kept going with my services and my clients and my boot camps, and I had that, I guess, safety net and that income security, I could just have fun and follow again the joy and see what would happen without forcing anything. And that has helped us too. Like there's clients coming in, like everything's flowing. So I've been proving to myself in the last 4 weeks that everything that I've been understanding, but not really tapping into last year, like understanding that I can allow the feminine energy, I can allow the trust, you know, in human design, I'm a generator. I'm supposed to sit back and see what comes up. I'm usually like a go-getter. So I've been proving to myself in the last 4 weeks that I can be in that state. And it is as simple as just what feels good right now. And everything will come in. Everything will come in. So it's been so much fun, which again, I love what I do. Clients, if you're listening, I love you ladies, but it's been so much fun to be excited about something and to tap into inner gifts that I had literally tamed from a very young age, and just following the flow. So
yeah.
yeah.
I want to talk about what it means to follow the joy, because super simple concept, and it's actually super simple to execute. Just people make it really complicated and block themselves in resistance.
Yeah.
But I think what you explained there, and I've seen myself go through that as well, is where you get yourself into a container of where you're growing and you're trying different things. Like what you were saying last year, you're like, I was exploring these things. I was understanding them from a logical perspective.
Yeah.
Then you have to start embodying them. And when you embody them, that's when like you feel it and you get it and you know it. And that's really where that, but I find the trust and surrender has to come before the embodiment, because you have to trust and surrender into acting a different way in order to, what you said, prove to yourself that you can have what you want, but just in a different way. I've also found, and I've seen this in myself as well, is business is always fun for me when I'm like 100% in and in alignment. And it should, right? Let's be honest. Running a business is not easy, but it's so satisfying and fulfilling when you're connected to it. Yes. And I find when I start to evolve, I get super serious about my business because I'm not connected to it as much anymore. So then the logic kicks in. Yeah. But then once you get back into alignment, it's not that you're not as serious, but you decide, I'm choosing to do this, so I'm going to do it in a fun way. If I'm recreating, if I'm reinventing, how do I want to do that? And let go of the, the old patterns or tasks or behaviors or mindset that just wasn't serving.
For sure. And it's a lot of unlearning as well. Like for me, doing always equal more success. So it's been very uncomfortable, as fun as it was in the last 4 weeks. It's been quite uncomfortable to just sit and just be and trust, because for me, there's always that little voice of like, that I'm trying to like quiet down or like understand where it's coming from. And it's our programming, right? And like and labels and everything we've talked about in the last 4 episodes. But doing, like I said, equal more success. So if I'm not doing a lot and like chasing the clients for Reiki and like building a website already or like a landing page, if I'm not doing a lot for this new service that I launched, then to me it was like, oh my God, am I really going to get the quote unquote results that I want to, that I expect? So I let go of expectations and I just kind of, again, sat back. But when I was doing, it was from a pure fun, because I want to, inspired action that we talked about, and not because I thought that by doing more and sending more emails and again, building a landing page or like doing some marketing around the service, from this scarcity mindset, almost from this like, oh, if I don't do this, they're not going to come in. I was doing the things because I wanted to, because it felt good. Everything just felt so easy. And the clients have been coming in, and I found a spot literally across the street from me, and just so everything just coming in, and ideas and being in that state for this specific, I call it the light project, for this light project influenced everything else in February. It influenced my bootcamp ladies. It influenced the one-on-one coaching calls that I had. It influenced so many ideas. Now I'm going to do an event in April. I'm going to build a masterclass, like, because I was in this high vibing state and that flow. Yes, the light project kind of boomed easily, but it influenced everything else, how I was feeling on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Which is where the magic happens.
Yeah. I love what you said there a little while ago too, with recognizing like, okay, my business is going to run, like whatever has already manifested, whatever I've created, it is in my life. So I have to engage with that. But what am I moving towards? And having that vision of the future of what you're building and what you're transitioning. Because the reality is we all want more, we all want change to some degree or another. But it doesn't always happen like that when it comes to, let's say, a new home that you need, or recreating your business, or finding the relationship that you want. There's so many stages that happen with that. And you need to get ready to explore who you are going to be in this new state. And I find too, when we go from having like a solid running full-time business, which you have, to starting something new, we almost don't think back to, well, what was it like to start that business before? I probably didn't have a landing page and thousands of people on an email list right away. So why am I expecting to have all of the pieces in place as soon as I have the idea? And I find that's where the inspired action comes, is when you can sit back and just allow that vision to almost like gestate and give it permission just to be there without doing anything. Then you get the hit of like, okay, I need to host this event. That's the event. For Simpli Sara, for me, it was a quiz. I needed to create that quiz, and then creating a 6-week program, and then like this podcast idea, just allowing that natural unfolding of your new creation.
Absolutely. And we talked about like space, I think, on part 1. And again, if you remove the constant need to be doing, this is where you can allow space, right? And it's trusting that, because again, that little voice will be, okay, well, if you're not doing this today, like you still have to get it done. So are you sure that you're going to get it done? And of course you will get it done, right? But from a very different state, not because you forced yourself to do it. So it's not about like sitting back and being lazy, like at all. It's quite the opposite, actually, because you're vibing high and you have clarity and things are coming in. You want to be acting and doing the things, but from a very different state and from a different vibration, which brings in the vibration that will allow you to have that success, or that new service or new relationship or whatever that is.
Yeah. Let's talk about vibration, because this will lead right into really what following the joy is. Joy is a high vibration, and joy is feeling joy and feeling good for no other reason than to feel good. A lot of the times we put conditions on, I need this thing and then I'll be happy. That's not true joy. That's conditional, and you'll end up vibing really low with that. If anybody's taken my quiz, how high is your vibe quiz, you'll find out if you exist or within the dimension of 3D, 4D, or 5D, it's called. And I kind of like to look at it like radio stations. So like, are you listening to country? Are you listening to pop? Are you listening to classical? And that's really all that it is. And you calibrated as in 4D, which I'm not surprised with all of the work that you've done. From a scale perspective, 3D is below 4D and 5D is above 4D. And not that one is good or bad or right or wrong. They're just states of being, states of mind, states of viewing the world. And I was actually surprised that you calibrated as 4D, because I really thought that you were 5D, but I can see that you are definitely in 5D now, and following the joy allowed you to get there, because every new phase of vibration, you have to let go of the things below. And so you cannot have anger, frustration, irritation, impatience, and be in 5D. That's 3D. And so you have to learn to release those. And it's not so much just forgetting about it, but how can I bring joy into my life? How can I make this fun? What would make this day feel really peaceful right now? It's reaching for those higher vibrations that will bring you up. And so I remember telling you last year, just follow the joy. And I usually just say it like that. Like, it's so simple and it's open-ended. And like, I see these like blank looks on people's faces, or it's like, well, yeah, of course, but like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? And I always just leave it, because it's something that stays in your mind, and it will ruminate with you. So tell me about your journey of following the joy.
Oh, it's been a journey following the joy. You know, who knew this would have been so hard to just follow the joy? So it started with me having to make an actual joy list. So I had to write down what brings me joy on a day-to-day basis, or like on a weekly basis. Everything that was on that list was related to my business or my health habits. So meditation, reading a book, working on my business. And you were like, no, but what else? And that was the first awareness for me, like, oh, I find a lot of joy and I'm happy with like my health habits and my business. If I'm not traveling, which I wasn't for 2 years, there's not much else. So I had to make a list of and trial and error, right? So I bought like a coloring book that lasted like a week. I started to play cards, like you and I did last August on a little getaway. So like playing solitary and like listening to Justin Timberlake, that brings me joy. Playing with my cat, having a dance party. So these little things that I could do daily, and then some bigger, like once in a while or once a week kind of thing. So going to visit my grandparents and have lunch with them and play cards. Like we would laugh so much, you know, going on a road trip or a weekend getaway. So then whenever I had space, or I was kind of forcing myself to prioritize being joyful, which now that I say it out loud doesn't make sense, but it was my journey. I had this list. So it wasn't like, oh, I have 10 minutes now, I'm gonna go to my default actions, check my emails, you know, go on social media or like stretch or meditate. I had the list, it's available. I can pick something that's different. And again, it was trial and error. Like some stuff on that list I've never did again. Some stuff on that list I still do. So I feel like exploring and being curious about what brings you joy. That was definitely phase one for me. But then I realized that this quickly shifted, I guess, because I was in misalignment most of last year. This quickly shifted to another to-do list, another task on my to-do list. So today I need to be joyful and I need to spend 30 minutes feeling joy. And I'm gonna like, you know, play solitaire, check, but I wasn't feeling it. I was doing it just to do it and just to have that dopamine hit. I checked something off my list. So I had to kind of remove this way of trying to bring joy into my life and go back, or not go back, but go towards like more vibration workouts, which you call them. So this is where, when I was talking about in the last couple episodes, like asking myself, what do I feel like doing? And tapping into and tuning into what my body felt like doing, what my emotions, my mind, you know, my spiritual body, and listening to that and having the answers to these questions, like, what do I feel like doing? Well, usually you feel like doing something that brings you joy, that brings you happiness, that makes you happy, that makes you feel light, you know, or calm or grounded, or whatever your home base is, or like we're talking about, like joy. So I had to go from, again, the very like practical, like type A, let's do the list, which was for sure the first phase for me, because I didn't know you know where to start, but then shifting into like the feelings. And then that kind of became a habit, right? Just asking myself, what do I feel like doing? And then I feel like having joy and being happy. And then the answers again to these questions were like, okay, I'll do this, or I'll do that, or I'll work in the kitchen with music on, or I'll go work outside instead of inside. So just finding little pieces of, you know, changing your environment, or putting some music on, or like lighting a candle, taking your time after your shower and not like rushing to do your hair, and just embracing the moment. And that added up, like the compound effect of all that just put me in this more stable 4D, now 5D vibration, so that I don't need to work as hard right now to feel joyful, and I don't need to ask myself these questions. It's back to like my default, pretty stable vibration. So yeah, that was the journey.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. I love you talked about the different phases there, because it's true. At least I can say for myself, I recognize being so conditioned by society to be like so focused and goal driven and future driven. And, you know, you're not happy till you achieve this. And if you need to check off XYZ in order to appear successful, or that you live a good life. And there's so much external validation that we're looking, or that I know that I was looking for before I really started my growth journey of like, what was happiness and success, without ever asking myself, well, what really brings me joy?
Yeah.
And I had to learn who I was as a joyful person. I used to be called no fun zone Sara in the house. Always. Yeah. Joe would be like, let's get some like Nerf guns and go play with the kids in the background. And I'm like, no, like, why would you want to do that? That feels like a waste of time. That's such a waste of time. I could be doing something that's more productive. And we're such overachievers and like massive productivity, like focused women to build our quote unquote best life. But are you really enjoying your best life, right? Like it's this now moment that you have, and only this now moment. And right now you're working in this now moment for your next now moment. And so when you start to recognize that, and it kind of distorts your perception on time when you get to that point, but you realize, if I'm not creating joy for myself right now, when will I do that? Because it won't be like when this thing comes into my life, because then that's just conditional.
For sure. And, you know, like when we think about stuff that we want, whether that's like a car, a new house, a relationship, a big business, you know, money, it's not the actual thing. It's the feeling. What's the feeling that having this impactful business is going to bring you, of having this like quote unquote optimal, perfect relationship? We're kind of chasing a feeling. So why not feel this way in the process of getting to that thing? So then you realize the thing it matters, and it's okay to want things and want like a successful life and whatever success means to you, but why wait? Why delay joy? Which is something I learned from you, when you can, again, moment to moment, just feel this way. Yeah. You don't need to wait for a specific outside thing or to reach a target to feel the joy, because it's very, very temporary.
Yes. I heard Abraham Hicks say something a while ago, and they say a lot that really hits me hard, but the one thing that I can never get out of my head and has changed my perspective completely was that to take pleasure in the energy flow of the becoming, not the manifestation. Mm-hmm. And I find like that's when you're in alignment, is because you're not in such a hurry to get the thing done, because you know that it will always be unfolding. And I enjoy this energy flow right now of like talking with you and what we're creating here. And there will always be an unfolding to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And so, because once we don't, that satisfaction of completion is awesome, but it's not the completion. It's what you had to do in order to get to that completion. And so if we're always looking at like, oh, I just want to close this chapter. I just want to close this chapter. Why are you in that chapter to begin with?
Exactly.
Because if it's not bringing you joy, do you think it's going to bring you joy when it's done? Absolutely not.
No, exactly. It just might bring you relief, which is not a good sign either. If you're relieved that something's over. Yeah. Yes. And that was me in February, just like enjoying the process. And yes, like getting excited about like the vision, what could happen, but not waiting for that moment or not having any expectations, and just being excited. Okay, let's see what's going to unfold today. What's going to come in? Like, what's the opportunity? And just feeling good in the process and not just the manifestation. That's a great point.
Yes. As we wrap up here, I'd love for you to maybe help any audience members who are thinking, okay, I need to surrender. I need to allow and surrender are such huge buzzwords, and they sound good and we know that we should do them, but then the practical application is really hard. And what you said a while ago about like, I kind of just turned my mind off. If there's any women listening here who feel like they live in their head, like, hello, that's Claudia and I to a T, right? Yeah. Like masculine driven women, always like the brain is just running. So how have you been able to, let's say, quiet that chatter in the mind, or been able to disassociate or become maybe the observer of it? What are some of the things that you've done in order to allow yourself to surrender?
Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. It takes a lot of awareness, which I think is a word we said 200 times in the last 4 episodes, just being very aware. But I started to ask myself, after making any decision in my day, the big decisions, the smaller decisions, who is deciding right now? So that's a question you guys can write down, like, who is deciding right now? Which part of yourself is deciding right now? So for example, I'm about to write a post for my social media. Who is deciding to write a post? Is it the anal masculine like to-do list who wants to just check it off the list? Is it the brain that's writing a post because I quote unquote should be writing about nutrition on a Monday? Or is it the heart because I went through something this morning and I want to talk about it and it just flows? So for me, I really divided like the brain on one side and the intuition, which I tie into like the downloads and like the spiritual and like the source, and then my heart, like what I feel like doing or talking about. And it was hard, but whenever the answer was, oh, your brain is making the decision right now, even if it wasn't an awful decision, but just to kind of break that pattern, I was like, okay, no, brain, you're on timeout. So I'm not going to do whatever I was about to do, whether that's writing a post or going for a walk or any decision, any action, just asking myself this question. But write it somewhere, because it's easy to jump from the next thing to the next thing without asking yourself this question. So I wrote it down on my laptop, like I could see it. I wrote it on my board, and as often as possible during the day, just asking this question: who is deciding right now? And if it was the brain, I was not doing it, and it was hard to walk away and surrender, but it was, it ended up paying tenfold for sure. Following the heart and intuition was what I needed. You do need your brain. I'm not saying like leave your brain on timeout forever, but that's what I needed in February to break the pattern. And again, to prove to myself that I can trust and surrender, and it will bring results.
Yeah. Yes. Wonderful. I love that you're moving into bringing energy work with your, fitness and nutrition clients. It's such a key component. And as you've learned, there's physical health and there's also energetic and spiritual health. You have an awesome podcast. It's actually called Awesome Conversations. tell us about your podcast. You also have a quiz if there's any French listeners here for us. So how can people get in contact with you, stay in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you. So Karmakin, basically on any platforms, you'll find me. The podcast is in Franglish, so I do have some English speaking speakers and I do some solo episodes in French as well. It's available on all the main platforms. We did one of my first episode was with you talking about masculine and feminine energy. So episode number 4, so you guys can listen to that. And yes, I do have a quiz. It's about 10 questions. And again, talking about awareness, it's an easy quiz that gives you a score on 100% to see you where you're at right now in your life with the different pillars. So your nutrition, your training, your mindset, and your recovery. What are some health habits that you're doing or maybe not doing? And that gives you a score on 100. And then you have access to some free challenges to start improving your health habits right away. And then you can, calculate your score again and see the improvement, or do it a bit of a challenge within your workplace or with your family. So that's on the website as well, which is karmakin.ca.
Wonderful. Thank you. Might need to bring you back for a regroup in 6 months and see where you are, with this journey, this new chapter that's really just opening up for you. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wisdom, your help, your advice. I'm sure it's been very valuable to the women who are listening here.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for joining me on this episode today. My website, simplysara.com, is a great place for me to continue to support you on your journey to alignment, joy, and fulfillment. There you will find upcoming retreats that I am hosting, resources, books, and many other helpful tools to help you on your travels through this thing called life.